Good morning, everyone. We're just going to give folks just a minute to make sure everyone's sufficiently connected and settled, and then we'll kick it off. All right, looks like most folks are in and connected to audio. Good morning and welcome to another installment of our Data Community of Practice. Really excited to have so many folks here today. One of the things that we heard from all of you and also from some other stakeholders, including our partners at RICS and some of the authorizers, is that this topic of high school data and cohort reporting is a major pain point for folks. And knowing that the deadlines for that reporting are coming up, we wanted to get ahead of it and hold this session now to give you all the opportunity to hear directly. Our presenter today is Lori Hazard. She's from the State Reporting and Accountability Team at Monroe 1 BOCES. And I believe Tracy Davey, Tracy Davey from Eastern Suffolk BOCES will also be available. Those of you from New York City know her well, know and love her. To know her is to love her in data land. If there's any differences or specific questions related to how Eastern Suffolk BOCES operates on this stuff, or that's New York City specific. We'll take questions. You can feel free to put them in the chat, but I will help facilitate them after Lori's presentation, but feel free as we're going along to enter questions in the chat. And you know what we'll actually also do, because we can all see each other, we can be like truly interactive. And when we get to the end, if you want to use the raise hand feature to ask a question directly, please also feel free to do that. I know folks are engaging sort of differently in the platform. So whatever is sort of easiest for you from a technical perspective, we're happy to facilitate. So with that, Lori, thank you so much for coming. I'll pass it over to you.
Okay, great. I'm just going to start by sharing my screen. Hopefully everybody can see the PowerPoint presentation, so that's good. I'm Lori Hazard. I do work for the Monroe 1 RIC. We are located in the Rochester area, and we help all of our Rochester area charter schools report data through our Monroe 1 Level 0. So that's our experience with charter schools. Joining me today is also Darren Lowell. He works in our department as well and does a lot of outreach with our charter schools. Tracy Davey is here. She helped with this presentation as well. And so did Erin Cochran from the charter school office at the New York City Department of Education, but she wasn't able to join us today. I think she got called away last minute to another emergency. So she's not here today, but she did quite a bit to help out with this presentation as well. So I'm just going to get started. We're focusing on New York State reporting and specifically high school data. And the first thing when you think of high school is you think of your graduates, and that's always the mad dash at the end of the year to get that graduate data in before the deadlines. I know for us, our deadline is towards the end of August for reporting that data to Level 0. I know other RICs have their own specific dates for reporting it. One thing to pay attention to when you're thinking about your graduates is the difference between the annual graduation data and the total cohort data. The annual graduation data is really any student who graduated in the current school year. So for this school year, that would be any student who graduated between August 2020 and by June 30th of 2021. Doesn't matter when they started school. They would be part of this annual grad data. So a fifth year senior who graduates by June 30th of this year, they're going to be in that SIRS 308 annual grad report for the 2020-2021 school year. So that report is in Level 2. So you'll hear me refer to a lot of the SIRS reports that are in Level 2, because those are the reports that you really need to look at and verify before your data is due at the end of the summer, because that's the data that the state's going to use to pull into your school report card and to the other reports that you'll see out on data.nicet.gov. So your annual grad data that you report is basically used to update that total cohort data that's also out in level 2. The total cohort data uses the first date of entry into grade 9. So as soon as a student enters grade 9 in a high school, that date that they entered that grade becomes their
My list
cohort.
has? Okay.
I think somebody's not muted. So students who first entered grade 9 in, let's say, the 17-18 school year, they would be part of the 2017 cohort. A fifth-year senior who might be graduating this year likely entered 9th grade in 2016. So they would be part of the 2016 cohort. So when I'm thinking about the difference between the two, annual grad data and total cohort, for annual grad data, I like to think of, hey, this is the class of 2021. But for total cohort, you look at that, oh, they're in the 2017 cohort because that was the first year they entered grade 9. So that's the difference between the two of them. That total cohort data that you look at in level 2, that's what's used for the graduation rate that you'll see in the school report card. It's also used on data.nicet.gov for the high school graduation rate data and the pathways data that you see out there, which this slide sort of illustrates. So this is just a screenshot from data.nicet.gov, and these are the reports that were available for the 1920 school year. And I always like to think of graduation data in Doctor Who terms. So it's a big ball of wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. If you're a Doctor Who fan, you'll understand that. So in the school report card, when you're looking at that data, that graduation data is actually lagged 1 year. So when you're looking at the 1920 school report card, you're really kind of looking at data that was reported in the 18-19 school year plus the August grads. So the cohorts for that data are going to be the 2015 cohort for your 4-year, 2014 for your 5-year graduation rate, and 2013 for your 6-year graduation rate. So it is lagged a year. But when you look at your high school graduation rate and your high school graduation pathways data, you're looking at data as of August of 2020. So you're actually looking at the 2016 cohort if you're looking at your 4-year graduation rate data. So that's the difference between the two of them. One lags a year and one is really represents that just that past year, that 1920 school year. When you're in level 2 reporting and you're looking at your total cohort data, so again, you're looking at it based on that first date of entry into grade 9. For this year, when you look at that 2021 data, when you're looking at the graduation rate or the graduation pathways data that will be used out on data.nicet.gov, you're going to be looking at, for your 4-year, you're going to be looking at the 2017 total cohort, and then your 2016 total cohort for the 5-year and 2015 cohort for the 6-year. So I've highlighted the ones that you'll want to take a look at. For the report card, for the 2021 report card, you'll really be looking at that 2016 total cohort graduation data as of August for the 4-year graduation rate. So again, it's lagged a year, but that's the data that you want to look at, and definitely focus mainly on this data this year, because this is really going to represent that data that you're reporting right now. In many cases, this is going to be sort of your class of 2021 students. Your 4-year students will have graduated by June. And then of course, you're going to want to review this again in October to take a look at those August grads, the students who graduate as of August 2021. So all of these verification reports are found on level 2 reporting in the total cohort folder. So that's total cohort. I'm going to pop back to annual grad data because this is really the data that you're reporting right now that's informing those total cohort reports. But this is the data you want to scrutinize. And the data that you're reporting is for your class of 2021. And you're going to be reporting and making some updates to the demographic data, which is the student light template in level 0. You want to make sure that you're taking a look at those first date of entry into grade 9 dates to make sure that they're accurate. That's very important because that defines which cohort they end up in. And if you don't put the right date in there, you might have a kid slip into the wrong year cohort, and that's going to impact your graduation rate under ESSA. Your diploma and credential type, you have to make sure that you've put in whether they've earned a Regents or local diploma, as well as any credentials that they may have earned, if they've earned a CDOS, or if you happen to have students who would earn a skills and achievement. Those are mostly your special ed students who take the alternate exams, state exams like the NISA. In addition to all of that, you need to report a career path, and your career path is really describing how did this student meet the graduation requirements, what assessments did they take in order to graduate. We all know that students need at least 4 assessments, 1 English, 1 math, 1 science, and 1 social studies. And then there's a +1, and the +1 can be either a math, a science, or the additional social studies. And there's also some other pathways exams. So this is just really defining how did the student graduate. If they graduated with the usual, adding on the extra social studies exam, so you've taken the US history along with the global, then they would graduate with humanities as their pathway. Make sure that your exit date for your enrollment has a date before the end of June. And your reason for ending is going to be, hopefully, for all your students graduated, and they've either earned a Regents or local diploma. Again, those verification reports can be found out on level 2, and you want to really scrutinize that annual graduation report, the SIRS 308, but also take a look at that SIRS 307 because that will show you any of your dropouts or non-completers so that you can review them. Sometimes you find a student who creeps in there because perhaps they may have the wrong cohort date here. So just take a look at those and review them and make sure your data is accurate. If your data is accurate here, it's going to be accurate in your cohort reports. In addition to your Regents and local diplomas, students can also earn a CDOS credential. If a student happens to earn a Regents diploma and they earn a career development and occupational studies endorsement on top of that, you want to make sure that you report them with the program service code of 8271, which is basically says that they earned the CDOS credential and a Regents at the same time. And the reason you have to report this along with that Regents diploma is there's no way to report 2 diploma types, right? You can only report 1 on that demographic student light template. So this is a way to capture that the student has also earned the CDOS. And this is going to inform your college career and civic readiness ESSA indicator on your school report card. And students who earn a Regents or local diploma along with the CDOS earn a weighting of 1.5. So a little higher. If you earn just a Regents diploma, your weighting is a 1. So all that gets factored into that college career and civic readiness indicator under ESSA. The verification report for that, you can look on the annual graduation report and see it. You should also be able to see it in the SIRS 401, which is the reasonableness report. Another sort of indicator that can be that goes along with students who have graduated that you want to make sure you report is the seal of biliteracy. Not all schools offer it, but I do have a list of schools, charter schools that do offer the seal of biliteracy. So make sure that you check with your high schools and your counselors or whoever is keeping track of the students who earn this seal, make sure that you touch base with them, that you know which students earned the seal by literacy, because you need to report that as a program service as well. And that is 8312. And it's just basically they received their seal of biliteracy, and your start date is just the date they received the seal, which it could be the day they graduated. It just needs to be a date before the end of June. Again, the seal of biliteracy is going to inform your college, career, and civic readiness asset indicator on the school report card. And students who earn the seal of biliteracy get a weighting of 2, which is the highest rating that you can get on the CCCR measure. So make sure that you're reporting that accurately as well. And if you take a look here, there's sort of 2. One is the student's a member of the cohort, but even if you have like a 5th-year senior who earns the seal of biliteracy, even though they might not be in the 4-year cohort, they would still get counted in this, which is really nice, because they become part of the numerator for this calculation, but not the denominator. So you get a nice boost. So that's pretty much sort of the general information that you need to report for your graduates and make sure that's out there. But there's other high school data that you want to make sure you're focusing on here at the end of the year. Assessments, and they're crazy this year because of COVID. We are again in a year where students can earn exemptions for Regents exams based on whether they pass the course. But in addition to that, the state has also offered Regents exams. So for the June Algebra 1, ELA, living environment, and earth science regents, if you had students who sat for those exams, you'll need to report their exam scores for that. In addition, if they also passed the course, you also need to report an exemption for those same exams. So you're going to report the exemption for all students who would have sat for a Regents, whether the Regents was offered or not. And if they've passed that class, they'll get the exemption for that Regents. And then in addition to that, if you had students who sat for one of those 4 Regents exams that were offered, you're also going to report scores for that. I highly recommend that you reach out to your center that you use to report your data to find out how they want you to report that data, because each center does it a little bit differently. But know that that's going to inform the secondary composite performance. And I don't know what they're doing with accountability this year. So my advice is to make sure that you report all your exemptions and that you report your scores, and you need to have them in. I think the state needs them by July 9th, and your reporting center may need them before then. So that is information that you want to start working on now if you can. You may know already students who have already passed courses. You may be winding down, getting towards the last days of school. Start to get that information together. And then when you get your Regents scores, report those as well. In addition to Regents, if you offer advanced placement or international baccalaureate courses and students take assessments in those classes, you need to report the scores for those. Those typically come in July and August. But one difference this year is the state also wants you to report any AP or IB exemptions if those tests would have been alternate Regents exams. So basically they could be exams that could be used for that +1 when we talk about the requirements for graduation. An example of that would be like the English language and composition AP exam, or the English language and lit AP exam. Those both can be used in lieu of taking the ELA Regents and can be used as a pathways exam. So if you had students who took those courses, even if they didn't take the AP exam, if they passed those courses, you can report exemptions for them for those AP courses. And all of those exams are listed in the SIRS manual under Alt Reg, ALT, REG as the test type. So that'll identify which AP and IB assessments you may need to report exemptions for. NICETLs, those get reported throughout the year as students take them. You know, that's the test that identifies a student as an English language learner. There are a couple of verification reports out there. One is the SIRS 303. That's the annual secondary assessment summary report. That one will show you your AP and IB assessments that you've reported to level 2. And then the SIRS 309 is the annual Regents report, and that will show you your Regents that have been reported, not just the ones that you will have scores for, but also all the exams that you've given exemptions for as well. So you want to definitely scrutinize those 2 reports before that July date. But even if you find errors after that data is due in July, you can still make corrections. They're going to have to collect a final whole of that data when they collect the data by the August deadline at the end of the year. So definitely take a look at those. Again, they're going to inform a lot of things on the school report card. In terms of that college career and civic readiness indicator, if a student scores a 3 or higher on a AP exam or a 4 or higher on an IB exam, they get an additional weighting. They get that 2.0 weighting as well. So another good reason to report all of your AP and IB assessments if you offer them. There's some other data that I think charter schools tend not to focus on as much, but you really want to, and that is your course data. So you have your student class entry exit template, which basically just tells the state what courses a student took. When you're looking at those courses, make sure if you have any courses that students could earn college credit for, like perhaps they're taking a course that they can earn credit through a local college or a local community college, make sure that you've got that dual credit indicator on the course section so that the state knows that that's a dual credit course. And also with your AP and IB courses, make sure you have a map to the right state course codes so that the state knows that those are AP and IB courses. And why do you want to do that? Because if you look down here on that college career and civic readiness indicator, a student who gets a Regents diploma and earns course credit through participation in a dual enrollment course gets a weighting of 2.0. And then a student who gets a Regents diploma and earns credit through participation in an AP or IB course gets 1.5 credits, would get a weighting of that. So even if they didn't do well on their AP exam, maybe they only got a 2, they're still getting a little boost just from taking that AP course. This also requires, because if you notice it says earned credit in these courses. So in order to know that the student earned credit, you also have to report whether or not the student passed the course in the student class grade detail template. So you want to make sure you're reporting that data as well, because that will inform the state of whether or not the student passed, failed, or just didn't complete the course. And it'll also identify the credits that they were attempting to earn and earned, because again, they're going to look for these credit earned, right? They're going to look to see, did they earn credit in these courses when they're factoring in that information in order to calculate the CCCR for the school report card. These can be verified in the student class grade verification report. You can also take a look in the SIRS 108. I'm not sure if they're going to update that this year, but you could take a look and see if they do for 2021. Again, I'm just not sure where they're going with some of the accountability reports. The student class grade verification report, when you're looking at it, it can be pretty overwhelming. I would recommend that you focus on those courses that you know are going to count towards ESSA. So look at those dual credit courses, make sure that that information is accurate, and look at the courses for AP and IB. And don't drive yourself too stir crazy trying to verify every single course, because you're going to end up with hundreds of records for those for all of your students in your high school. Attendance data. Oh, was there a question? I thought I heard somebody pipe in. Attendance data is going to inform chronic absenteeism. And I know that the accountability office hasn't really said much, but if I had to place a bet in Vegas, I would say that they're probably going to take a look at chronic absenteeism for this year, because we have been taking attendance all year. So I think that's one that we might end up being on the hook for, even if it doesn't totally go towards uh, a total school report card under ESSA thing. I think they'll still report out on chronic absenteeism. Your SIRS templates for those are the day calendar, which basically define whether a day is instructional or non-instructional, your student attendance codes, and then your student daily attendance. This year has been crazy because they did add to the attendance, student daily attendance, and now we're not just reporting negative attendance, which means we're reporting when students are absent. We're also reporting when students are in school. So they added a bunch of codes this year to identify when a student is present or if a student's been tardy to school, but they're also considered still present. If a student is in school that day, so they're present or tardy, you also have to report a learning modality. Were they there in person? Were they learning remotely? Or was it a combination of both? Maybe they spent half the day in school and then the second half of the day they were remote. You don't need to report these learning modalities for absences, just for when the student was in school. You can look at a bunch of reports for verifying this data in SIRS. You have, I would focus really on the SIRS 375 and the SIRS 371. Just to make sure that you don't have any missing data. If you have any missing attendance data, it's going to be counted as an absence. Someone asked a question, can you explain how present out is different from present remote? Okay, so the present in and present out, those were added to help schools identify when a student was not just present, but also present and physically in the school building. Because one of the scenarios that could happen is you could have a student who's present in school, but their teacher is out. And so they're present in school, but they're still learning remotely because their teacher has decided to Zoom in from home. So present in school is about where the kid is, and the kid is in school. You could also have present and out of school, which would be the same thing. The student is present, but they're out of school. They're not physically in the school building. And I would think in this case, they would be learning remotely. This also was to help schools identify in case there was an emergency, like a fire, who actually is physically in the building? Who do we need to be accountable for? Because a lot of people realize that just recording present might, and a learning modality might not actually identify where the student truly is. So that's why they added present in and present out. And same thing with tardy in and tardy out. I think next year, these are going to be the ones they're using, and they're going to get rid of just present and tardy. But we'll wait for that to happen next year. The vendors know. Do we need to use those codes, or can we just use present remote? For this year, you can just use present and then a learning modality, and you can just use tardy and a learning modality. And I think at least all of the schools in our area are only using these for this year. I think next year the landscape's going to be a little different, but I'm not worrying about next year yet. So suspension also gets reported on the student daily attendance template, but suspensions are not absences. And they also aren't really attendance indicators. They're really separate from attendance. So when you report suspension, you're really reporting whether a student is an in-school or out-of-school suspension. But remember, if you're reporting a school is in out-of-school suspension, you still need to report an attendance code for that day. So the school student may have been out-of-school suspended, but did they show up for tutoring? And were they present for tutoring that day? or were they absent from tutoring? So you still have to record an attendance code for that student as well. So you're going to end up with 2 records for that student for that day. You're going to have the suspension record, and then you're also going to have an attendance record for that student. So don't let that slip by you. And again, looking at those SIRS reports where they show you the missing attendance is a great place to start. So you push your attendance records up, you get them into level 2 and look to see where you're missing attendance. And that'll help you pinpoint any records that you might be missing in level 0. And again, the suspension data is going to inform the suspension indicator under ESSA. So you want to make sure that that data is accurate as well. Finally, you have English language learners, and there is the English language proficiency indicator under ESSA that takes a look at growth over time with your Ls in terms of how close they're getting to becoming commanding with the English language. And there's a whole math behind that and how they calculate that L proficiency under the ESSA indicator that I don't have time to go into because it's complicated. However, you want to make sure that you're actually reporting all your Ls. So make sure that all your English language learners do have the 0231 L eligible program service record, along with the actual program service they're receiving, whether it's English as a new language, transitional bilingual education, 1 or 2-way dual language, or they could be L eligible but not in an L program for some reason. The SIRS 650 English language learner profile report is a great report to review to verify your Ls. You can also look at the programs under the SIRS 401 reasonableness report to see all of your Ls in that report as well. And finally, just a note for Ls, once your NYSA SLAT scores come back in August, you need to make sure you look for any student who earned commanding on that, because if a student earned commanding on that NYSA SLAT, then they need to be exited from L eligible program services as of June 30th, 2021. If they get expanding and they also passed the ELA Regents exam, then they also can be exited from L eligibility program service records as well. So make sure that you pay attention that NYSA SLAT data comes back really late in August, and you only have like a week usually to exit those L's. So just to keep an eye out and make sure that you go through those reports when that data does come out, so you know whether you need to end some L eligible records. If you don't end them, the student never becomes a former L, and that begins to mess with your L proficiency indicator under ESSA. And then just a little bit with the reporting due dates, definitely reach out to your level 1 center, whoever you report data through, to find out what the dates are for your center. Everybody though, all of the New York State charter schools do have to submit and verify the same data. And if you have any questions in terms of New York City charters out there, I know that the majority of your data is reported separately sort of through New York City. Erin did say that if you had questions about anything with this presentation or specific questions about data reporting through New York City, that you could reach out to her through this help desk. One of the things I wanted to show real quick was the end of the year SIRS data reports. This is out there. I think we put a link out, and I think they're going to send this out afterwards. This is basically the state's checklist of reports that you need to certify in level 2 reporting. And Tracy and I just sort of went through and we highlighted what the charter schools need to do. So that would better focus you as you're looking at the report on which reports you need to certify and which reports you should be looking at for this year. If you look over here, it'll tell you the ones that need to be certified. You see a bunch of to be determines when it comes to these accountability reports. So I suggest you look at them if they're out there because we're not sure yet. But this is a great place to start. And another sort of chart I put together more for myself, but I like to share it out because it makes it easy for me. I took all of your verification reports that need to be certified and sort of connected them to the accountability reports that are in level 2, and then the ESSA indicators that they inform, so that you can see when you're looking at data and you're certifying these reports here, what ESSA indicators they're actually informing and how they relate to the school report card. So that's out there for you as well. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
I think, Laura, you got a lot of them as we went along already. It looks like Janet, and Janet, I don't know if you want to unmute and ask, but we've heard from some charters that they'd like to report CDOS exams for their +1 graduation path. Can you explain where to report those tests and exemptions?
With CDOS exams, are you talking about like CTE assessments? Or are you talking about ones that you could use for pathways?
For the +1 pathways.
I believe if you look in the SIRS manual, they'll have actual pathway exams for those CDOS. They'll tell you the exam and then how to report them.
Yes, that's the problem. We have anecdotally heard from a number of charter schools who say they've been administering these approved CDOS exams for years, but never knew how to report them.
But never knew how to report them. It should be in the SIRS manual. I'm going to pop up and see my SIRS. We actually don't have any charter schools in our area who do report those as like official exams. So that's a great question. I don't know, Tracy, have you run?
Yeah, I was going to chime in. Thank you.
Good. Please chime
Hi, everybody.
in. Save me.
Okay. So on next week's C Weekly, we will include directions about how this can be reported. We'll be leveraging the program service, a program fact template for that. And I forgot, I think there was 2 parts of that question, right? For your exams for Regents exemptions, we already have resources on our website now. Those can be reported at your convenience. Again, every student who passes any Regents class, any of the 10, need that reported. That's in today's C Weekly, or last night. I forgot when that came out. Yes, it's Wednesday already.
So
Time's flying.
Just to confirm, so then exemptions for the CDOS exams would just be reported as a pass. Would that be correct? Because
Lori outlined that. I'm sorry. I was just saying, Lori outlined where even for the IB classes, if someone was registered in those classes, they're eligible for an exemption. We are not collecting that in the assessment program fact, in the assessment fact record. So that I might need to. I'll follow up with Aaron at the DOE on that one. So you're saying a CDOS test exemption is a possibility out there, correct?
Yeah, Aaron shared with me the frequently asked questions.
Okay.
And it was described in there. So she was absolutely correct. There are exemptions. But my understanding is that the CDOS exams for the +1 pathway are just reported as pass fail. There's no scores.
Okay. All right. So I don't know that one offhand, but I'll follow up with Aaron, and I'm sure I'll make sure it's in next week's C Weekly for everybody.
Terrific. Thank you, everybody. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, great job, Lori.
Any other questions out there?
Lori, folks are interested in that SIRS manual that you were just flashing around. Do you have a link that you don't mind sharing?
Sure. So the SIRS manual is located out on the SIRS website, and my mouse just decided to lock up on me, so that's not good. Hey, Tracy, can you pop that link? Thank you.
There we go. Look at the teamwork. Love it, ladies.
Yeah, since my mouse just decided to die on me, I think.
It's always the way. That's when the battery goes.
The SIRS manual is where you find out how to report everything. And I typically don't share the manual, I share the link because they update the manual regularly. I think we're up to version 16 this year. So, or some crazy version of the manual.
It's 16 is the year. This is the
year.
16th year of the warehouse. We're in version 12.
12, okay.
Yeah.
We're on version 12. So they've made 12 revisions to the SIRS manual since the beginning of this school year. So it's always best to go out and get the latest and greatest.
What a year it's been in so many ways, and data reporting as well. Questions from other folks, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand. I'll give it a good old teacher wait time, and then we'll call it good. All right. Well, thank you again so much, Lori and Darren and Tracy and Aaron, who can't join us but contributed. We super appreciate it. I know I speak for everyone when I say that. This is complicated stuff, and never more so than this year, right? The benefit of waivers is a lot of flexibility, and the complexity is just additional. So thank you again so much. A couple of logistical notes for folks. We'll be posting this recording in the materials. And so, there we go. There's always sort of a last gasp of questions. No, you're totally fine, Kate. Don't apologize at all. Kate's asking, when a student completes the task, it does not count towards the graduation metrics, correct?
Yeah, it gets complicated, but yes, in a way it does, because they will see that in the college career and civic readiness indicator. So a student who earns their, completes the task and gets their GED, during the year that they do that, you get, I think, 0.5 credit for that student. And the nice thing for that, again, it goes into the numerator of that equation, but that student isn't necessarily part of the cohort, so they're not in the denominator. So you get a little bit of boost. So you definitely want to make sure that you follow up and report students who complete their task. I know it can be hard to do. Sometimes it's really hard to follow up and find out whether or not the student actually earned their GED or not. Some centers are better than others at getting back to schools about that.
Yeah, Lori, it is exactly half a credit toward that rating. And that's beautiful, because never until ESSA, right, the Every Student Succeeds Act, before a dropout was just a mark against you. And now they, they're halfway there. It's a bonus.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, ladies. We also want to drop in the chat the recording from an earlier version of one of these meetings where we did a sort of similar deep dive on the attendance reporting that is specific for this year. So if you haven't had time to watch that, we get through most of the content in the first sort of 30 or 35 minutes. Highly recommend it. And in particular, schools in New York City, where that attendance reporting deadline is coming up in a little bit less than a month. So please take a look at that. And if you have questions, let us know. And then in sort of further ahead and exciting news, we hope to see many of you in person and or virtually at our annual conference in October. We will be doing a blended approach. I won't call it hybrid because maybe we're all tired of that descriptor, but we'll have a day of virtual content and then content in New York City. So we would love to see you there. We are asking folks if you can let us know if you're interested in coming in person. If you're going to feel comfortable with that, that will be helpful for us to gauge size and capacity. If there's content you'd like to see, please let us know. And if you would like to present, schools really always want to hear from other schools, and data topics in particular are really interesting. So things like what you do for dashboards and how you think about data-driven instruction, how you manage some of this reporting compliance. We would love to hear from you. So with that, I will thank everyone again and wish you a great rest of your beautiful June day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.